Welcome to the Music Business Buddy with me, Johnny Amos, podcasting out of Birmingham in England. I am the author of the book, The Music Business for Music Creators. I'm a music creator myself. I'm a consultant, an artist manager, and a senior lecturer in both music business and music creation. Wherever you are and whatever you do, consider yourself welcome to this podcast and to a part of this community. I'm here to try and educate and inspire music creators from all over the world in their quest to achieving their goals by gaining a greater understanding of the business of music. Okay, so in this week's episode, I am joined by Drew Sherrod, right, who is a music creative, music supervisor, producer, consultant out of Nashville in Tennessee in the USA. He is a cool dude, as you will see shortly. Fascinating guy, a really, really fun guy to talk to. He's just come out of a term with the historic House of Bryant catalogue. He's also at 1010 Music, Carnival Music, BMG, Tree Vibes, Anthem Entertainment. He's worked on the label side, on the publishing side. He was at Lip Sync Music. He's done all sorts of different things. He was at Open Road Entertainment as well. He'll talk a little bit about that. He is something of a trailblazing music supervisor and somebody that I should imagine is probably very hard to get a hold of. So I'm very, very, very fortunate that I managed to get him in on this podcast. You know, he's very sought after, right? And he's a bit of an expert, or more than an expert, when it comes to music supervision. Guys, just to give you a little bit of context here. So if you think about the idea of trailerizing songs, so the idea of taking a song and kind of piping it into a trailer to sell a movie, right? That's not always been a thing. And I'd be as bold as to say that Drew was one of the first people that actually started to make that a thing. He gave people like Moby and Drake and various others their kind of first breaks into the music business as a result of kind of using their songs in trailers and stuff. He will talk a little bit about that. He's worked on some big blockbuster movies, and he works as a consultant for various legacy artists and writers and producers and all sorts of different things. He's a fascinating guy. So I'm just going to hand over to the interview and enjoy everything that he has to say. Here we go. Drew, welcome to the Music Business Buddy. It's good to have you here. First and foremost, how are you?
Thanks. I'm doing well. Thank you. It's so nice in Nashville right now. It's that part of winter where you definitely need a coat, but the skies are a slightly different shade of blue, and it's in like visually striking time to walk out of your house. It's really cool.
Oh, that's really nice. That's it's almost like spring is just kind of, flirting itself into existence.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more reliable these days. It used to be about this time things would be snowy and really cold, but now it's just like really crispy, for better or for worse. That's where we're at.
Ah, interesting. Okay, well, we'll take that over snow. That's for sure. So Drew, let's begin in the present moment, right?
Of course.
Before we kind of time jump back a little bit. So you wear a lot of hats, right? You're a consultant, a creative, a music supervisor. You're based in Nashville. What does a typical sort of day look like to you in your career right now?
Doing what I do in Nashville is very different than it ever was in Los Angeles. Like the Los Angeles day is very much, get up, go to whatever kind of office you go to, and there's a good amount of time you're going to spend in traffic. So that's pretty much you start the day in the car. Whereas here, I definitely served some years in an office, and it was a little bit more like that. But for me nowadays, it's more like, get up and like the second you're awake, you check the emails and everything because you don't know, you could have been working on who knows what the night before. And sometimes when you wake up, you're dazed. So you get in the habit, you just check your email. But anyway, here in Nashville, like gigs are a little bit less abundant than they are in Los Angeles, New York, London. Gigs for me, like proper jobs. So I guess, depending on who my consultancies are at the time, I just jump on the computer and start going at it. Like, I'd say probably it's going to depend on what I ended the day before doing. Like right now, I've got this cool thing going where I'm working with a bunch of like legacy families and legacy artists. And how do I explain it? Like a lot of people inherit publishing catalogs, and their families don't always know what to do with them in order to monetize or keep their lives afloat, so to speak. And so I'll go in there and I'll, first I got to look at the assets, and then I figure out, okay, so are any of these signed with a big publishing company? Are any of these open? Which ones are masters? Which ones are copyrights? And then just go through the process of showing them how to use those assets to make money, and to either, if you want to sort of rebuild that career and let the world back in on it, that's one thing. And if you want to sort of keep quiet and just let it do its thing, that's another thing. But, everything from getting your masters back from the label to getting your copyrights back from a publisher, or, surging into the world of sync and figuring out what those assets are good for in the sync world, because everything in sync, I think every song has a place as long as it's a good one. But that doesn't mean it's ever going to find that place. And that really what it comes down to, like helping people find those places where they can make money with their assets. And if it's, like I said, if it's a legacy thing, that's how we do it. If it's an artist, that's a very different process. Or if it's a writer, being here in Nashville, it's a little bit like being in Los Angeles and everyone's an actor, but everyone here in Nashville is a songwriter. It's the same thing.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've got a little bit of experience myself of that kind of legacy catalogue management, and it can be very, very difficult, especially if things haven't been getting collected properly.
Oh, God, yeah. That's so true. And it really piles up, too. It's crazy.
It can be quite difficult to correct if the collect hasn't been done right. It changes the value. It all sorts of different facets to it. But
it's a real process, and it also depends on where you're getting the money from. If it's overseas, if it's local.
Yeah,
they're getting better at helping the writers find the money that they have created, that they have earned. It's not a perfect system yet, but it's definitely getting better and better, I think.
Yeah. That's. I like it that you said that, because I always look to find a positive in something, and it is, isn't it? I mean, I know there's a fair way to go, but it is. Things are getting better. Let's time jump back a little, Drew. So you started out as an artist and then transitioned into being a music publisher. Okay, yeah. What was that transition like for you?
Well, I think it would be a stretch to call me at that time a publisher. I think it's easier to say that I came into the business by way of publishing. To say that I was a publisher, I think would embarrass a lot of the great minds that championed me.
Okay.
So I just, there's a lot of us creatives is as much circumstance as it is a gift.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I grew up, I don't want to go too far back, but I think it's fair to say I grew up under a rock in the middle of Appalachia. Wasn't a lot going on around where I lived. But luckily I had family in the business in Nashville, and that sort of corralled my attention and my older brother's attention to the music world. And then a little bit later when we moved to Knoxville, which is a really great music town. It's a rock and roll town. And lucky for my brother and I both, it wrapped its rock and roll arms around us and sort of introduced us to the right people and corralled us on our way toward Nashville, basically. When I got to Nashville, my older brother had beat me there. He was already publishing, and I think you could call him a publisher now. But because he was already kicking and screaming, he sort of showed me the ropes in the quickest, most easy, straightforward way. And so I started working in the tape room of everywhere I ever worked. You start out in the tape room back when tape was a thing, and eventually walked up Music Row toward the new BMG building, and BMG eventually transferred me to the Los Angeles office, BMG Publishing. And that was the original BMG Publishing, very different than the BMG now. And
yeah, I think a lot of people get confused by that.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. Very different. They're both, great publishers in their own times. And they're both Bertelsmann, but it's just, oh God, if you really dissect that company, there's a lot to learn, in a good way. So yeah, I ended up in Los Angeles in the Beverly Hills office of BMG, in 98, 99. And, if you know the pattern of sales that BMG went through, that was pretty close to the first big sell. And, like most people, that sell brought on a lot of change. And instead of going to another publishing place, I ended up going to a music supervision job. And it was for trailers. And movie trailers at the time weren't... They weren't the exposed media resources they are now. They were very different back then. Actually, the trailers weren't all that different, but I remember my first trailer was maybe Black Hawk Down, with a guy named Adrian as the editor. And God, he was a genius, still is a genius. And I think we used a Moby track. And I like to think it helped Moby get on his way towards, a big career.
I would say so at that time. Yeah.
Not too far after that was like Jarhead, and Jarhead helped. We put Jesus Walks by Kanye West in there, and I think that sort of sprung him from strictly producer to producer artist at the time.
Yeah.
We did a lot of work. I was lucky the place that I worked was called Open Road, and it was kind of a medium-sized trailer house, but it was growing. And I think you find in the music part of the movie trailer world that the ratio of editors to supervisors and producers to editors, that determines a lot for how many movies and projects you actually get in on. And at the time, they had a lot of editors and a couple of producers and only one supervisor. So I think it's fair to say I have a pretty high number of projects I've worked on, circumstantially. It's not, I didn't go out and make that happen. It's just the way things were. There were a lot fewer trailer houses back then. And I think I was maybe one of 3 supervisors, maybe no more than 5. I can think of 3. And because of that, we just did a lot of work, and I think, hatched a lot of what's happening these days. Of course, originally the things that you start, they end up running over you when you're old. But it was really cool to be a part of a lot of, the launching phase of a lot of trends that are really kicking ass now, which I love.
Wow, that's very interesting. So it's kind of some of the things that you did, like the practices, the protocols, the clearances, that kind of operation, then kind of got emulated by a lot more production companies moving forward.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that back then, we were strictly creative. Like, our jobs were to accommodate the creative process, whether it was the editor or the producer or the client at the studio. And it was left up to the clearance people at the various studios to do the back end work. So, the first, I'd say, 5 years of my supervision life was nothing but creative, just finding the right songs and learning how to keep track of everything was tough, because iTunes did exist, but it was very finding its way. So everything was on CD. Luckily, I missed most of the tape days, which was tough. I definitely was in on the tape days in Nashville, but by the time I was a supervisor, things were digital, and that made things a lot easier.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So digital, but like early digital. So
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I think there'd be a lot of music supervisors that would be supremely jealous
Yeah.
that you kind of got to do the creative stuff without having to worry so much about the
Yeah.
clearance aspect.
Yeah. It's true.
It's like two different jobs, right?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's very different. It's just the difference between designing the cars and selling them, you know?
Yeah.
Uh,
So during that era, were you kind of getting bombarded with
yeah.
CDs and stuff all the
Yeah.
time from sort of
Oh,
record
God.
companies?
Yeah. You see pictures of old British guys and those libraries in London where it's just like books are everywhere. Like you're sitting on a stack of books and your desk is a bunch of books. Like that's how it was with CDs. It was really a lot.
Wow.
And your mail, like every day the mail would come in and it would be like, oh God, like two trips down to the lobby, with one of those huge mail buckets coming back up, and it was just all CDs. And every now and then you'd get like, oh, cool, an iPod, or like these random things people would put their catalogs on in order to like charm you. Like you'd get, oh, cool, a free this or a free something. Oh, okay, you put your songs on a really expensive iPod, and now I get to keep that, and that's so weird. Like a lot of things you couldn't do now.
Wow. That must have guilt tripped you though, thinking, oh God, I've got to listen to all of this now because someone's
it did at first.
Yeah.
It did at first. Like you, and I think, if you've ever been to any of the things I speak at, I try to always stay until everybody's songs have been heard and everybody's questions are answered and the crickets are chirping. And it was kind of the same way with listening to people's music. I feel like if they're going to go to the trouble of finding out who I am and care about what I do, then I owe it to them to give them a crack.
Yeah, that's it's such a fascinating discipline, music supervision. I mean, in fact, discipline might even be the wrong word. Art form, right? The idea of kind of listening to something and going, right, that story that they're trying to tell there, especially with a trailer, right, where it's just so short. You're lucky if you've got 2.5 minutes, and then you go, bang, we are going to help you to tell this story with or without, whether that ends up there just for this job right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you're really good at it,
Thanks.
And so if you could kind of, surely there must be times, where you're watching other things just as a consumer, as a fan, watching a film, watching a trailer for a film and going, what'd they choose that for? Like,
oh man. Yeah. Well, a lot of times when you're witness that kind of thing, you feel usually who did it because everybody's got their little thing that they do. But I always tried to avoid that because I felt like I was kind of drinking my own snake oil. Like if you're selling, sometimes it's an illusion and sometimes it's, this really nutritious breakfast. And then other times it's, you just never know. Every movie and every project has its own way of getting to a demographic or a group of demographics. And, when you get into the swing of doing that every day, you almost feel like it's the opposite, where like if you see too many of them that are already done, it might get in the way of how to come up with what's next.
Yeah, that's it. Do you sometimes find, Drew, that like certain film directors just have that kind of that nuance of what they want, knowing what they want, and just kind of they have that skill, if you like?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a lot to do with teams and groups. Very few people come in and have everything figured out and then it works. I will say that most people come in and they think they have everything else figured out and they find out that either they don't, or even if they do, it's just too much to do your, like you can't make that many decisions well in a given period of time. And also when you're involved with getting anything to the number of people that you have to get those things to in order to make enough money to compensate, you just can't do it all. Like you have to have an army, and if you don't delegate those decisions and stuff like that, I've seen people try, boy, they go down in flames. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
That's a good observation. Okay.
Yeah. And it's a kind of a game of telephone, but I will say people like Judd and people like Sandler, and there are certain people that they're good at finding teams who understand what they like enough to operate on their behalf. I think that might be the trick. I think that it's like, who do you trust? And loyalty is everything. That's the other thing. It's all kings and queens and posses, who do you answer to? That really comes down to everything. Do you answer to the director or the producer or some ubiquitous no-faced thing called the client, or the person you answer to isn't always the person who signs your check. And if you're on the underside of that, you just got to know who's the real creative boss. And if you're on the top side of that, you got to find out who it is that you can trust to do your work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What kind of qualities do you look for in music creators that are looking to license their music into sync opportunities? Like, do you expect them to kind of be able to know the language, the terminology, the business?
Not always. It depends. Look, anytime I teach a class, the first thing I say is everything depends. And I warn every student that you're going to get annoyed with me a lot, because I'm almost always going to start every answer with, well, it depends. And I think figuring it all out is a matter of figuring out what it depends on. So in answer to that question, it depends on if you're trying to be an artist. Like, are you putting this music out in order to support a bigger effort on your own of yourself? Like, do people know your name when they hear your music? Or are you more of a composer and it's all sort of targeted? And then there's also sort of like the chemist, scientist, music makers who they usually do pretty well because they learn about the tools of the music, like the functionality of certain sounds and things, and when you get that figured out, you can get pretty specific with what you're aiming toward with a certain song or cue or sound effect or sound design. When you're able to really target the functionality, it's a lot easier to get where you're headed, I guess, because you know where you're headed. But if you're more of an artist, then it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. You want to have at least a couple of people that you're working with, and because, then it's a bigger job. It's a bigger effort. It's a bigger process.
Yeah, it's a much wider operation. Yeah. Good advice. Aside from, this is a big question. Sorry, Drew, but
no problem.
Aside from the sort of technological changes, what cultural shifts have you noticed the most during your career in the music industry so far?
Well, the first and foremost, the job has changed a lot. Like the actual doing of the job has evolved and it's devolved. And I think that's, I guess if everything works in cycles, then you have to have both of the evolving and the devolving. I don't think there are a lot of supervisors now that are carrying the creative load as much. I think it's, anybody with Spotify and iTunes, they're going to be a lot more confident going into the process of manipulating the watcher's emotions with music and sound. They're going to be a lot more, I have to say confident. I'm not going to say they're going to be better at it, but they're sure going to think that they are. And you got to be careful what you do as a supervisor if you want to keep your job. You got to be honest, but I think there might be a little bit more therapist involved in supervising now than there used to be, and a whole lot more librarian than there used to be. And I think for a long time there, you could be a little bit of a rock star. And I don't mean that always in the good way. Like sometimes you had to be a little crazy and wacky to keep your director or your producer interested in you, it was a very social thing back then. It's social now, but it's different.
Is it safer now, do you think, Drew, because of metadata and filters, and are there less shocks?
I don't think so. No, it's not safer. Like I say, it's just different. One of the last big explosions, I'll say, before I started to be a more independent supervisor, one of the big things that was starting to become a real problem was people would take audio from YouTube and kind of sew that into their projects. And, if you can't identify exactly what it is, it's hard to get it cleared. It's hard to put it on a cue sheet. So I would be getting, everybody's got their way of doing cue sheets, but at the time we were just get the timeline of the project and you could see it would just say YouTube and you'd be like, oh shucks, this is not gonna fly. And then you have to confront people that, could push a button and you'd shoot out the roof of the facility into the street,
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
So I guess in answer to your question, it's not safer. I think there are versions of the same thing now, but tracking is better. But there's always tricks. I know people who, if they think something is watermarked or whatever, they'll just, they'll go into the voiceover booth and record it analog and put it back in. There's ways around everything.
Yeah.
So it'll always be dangerous in that sort of insidious way. But it's all, things get better. And I think it's still a little bit Wild West. And I hope it stays that way, not because I don't want people to get paid, but, at some point, you lose the magic of blood, sweat, and tears, like if you don't have a little bit of that arm wrestling match between the people who will do anything to get their ideas heard or seen versus the people who will do anything to exploit those people, I think that's usually where the danger either comes in or goes out the door.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes it's the music industry, right? We need mavericks. We need
it's entertainment now. I think I don't want to correct anybody. I would love for it to be the music industry, but I think now it has become very. The liquid has become a gel. I think there's little to no separation between the different types of media, because they all lean so hard on each other. The important difference is how well each type of media stands up on its own without the other's help. Yeah, it's a very big question to ponder, honestly.
Yeah. That's an interesting question you raised there, actually. That's for sure. Drew, one final question for you. If you were to spend an hour with the 18-year-old Drew, and you got to sit down and have a coffee or a cup of tea or a beer maybe, and just give some advice, what would you tell him?
I'll give you the quick answer, and then I'll try to give you a better answer.
Okay.
The quick answer is you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. That's a Kenny Rogers quote.
Is it Kenny Rogers? Okay.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I love that. Okay. Yeah. Wow. That's super.
Know when to hold them, when to fold them, when to walk away, and when to run. But the real answer, I think, is more like...
I'll take your first answer.
Yeah, the first one's pretty good. The first one's pretty good.
It's difficult to top that, isn't it? No, yeah. Is it? But yeah, no. Dive deeper. What would you?
Oh, well, my career's been the result of a lot of incredible people and a lot of really vile people, and I think the best advice I could have given myself was to focus on telling those people apart, and to whenever something's happening that's not right, that's you. I mean, you got to put your foot out and you got to stop the train and you got to do the right thing at the right time. It's really hard sometimes, though. I got to say, it's maybe the hardest thing is, being on the airplane and something's happening that you're not cool with, and you have to go up and tell the pilot to turn everything around and to go all the way back to the airport, and everyone in the airplane's mad at you, but you did the right thing for the right reasons, because time, everything looks a certain way in the moment, but it looks very different in retrospect.
Yeah, stronger advice. I think in the cold light of day, the ability or the wisdom, if you will, to be able to go, should I do something about this, or do I risk my own reputation by just keeping quiet? That is so difficult.
Yeah. And I think that's the really direct way of looking at it. But I think it also happens in really sneaky ways where, you get a job offer that's just crazy money, but you're going to be working with people that might be a little scary, or, there's a movie campaign or a TV show or something like that wants to use your music, but then they want you to change this and change that, and it's a good money, and you're like, oh my God, there's a whole legion of people that are going to benefit if this works, but then you've gone back and you've changed something that every one of those people had already put their blood, sweat, and tears into. I mean, it comes down to publishing. It can come down to masters. Like, there's always, and you can never make everybody happy. And that's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that, like, when art and commerce butt heads, it's always going to be better to be on the art side than it is going to be on the commerce side. And sometimes that's the difference between you still have a house payment or you've paid your house off. But doing the right thing with the house payment is a lot better.
Strong advice. Yeah. Strong advice. Yeah.
I go through this list. I made you a little list, and I'm just going down this list, and I'm trying to, put that into context. I think I've done a pretty good job, but you'd have to ask around. You just don't even know. You can't tell how many people you've affected in a encouraging way versus the people that you've accidentally stepped on and you didn't mean to. It's just, you gotta do the right thing.
Yeah. Gosh, Drew, thank you so much for putting the time aside to talk to me on the podcast today. I think there'll be a lot of people that really benefit from your wisdom, from your insight, from all of your experience. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Wow. Everybody, after we did this recording, Drew and I carried on talking for quite a while, and there were so many interesting things that he told me about, and I thought, oh man, I really wish I'd asked him this, or I really wish I'd got that in on the episode, because I think the reality is he's done so much in his career, and knowing where to kind of jump into the timeline in order to be able to understand his stories and his successes to their full extent, is quite a weighty, depthy thing, right? So I think it would make a lot of sense for he and I to have part 2 of that conversation. It's something I have talked to him about, and I think it's something we'll do because there's so much more to him than what we just heard. But nevertheless, that episode, I found it fascinating to talk to him. Absolutely fascinating. Some of the things that he spoke about in this episode were a real eye-opener for me, and I hope for you too. For anybody that doesn't quite realise this, to talk to music supervisors, to get near them is pretty difficult, right? I know a couple of pretty high-level A&R guys that cannot get hold of them, right? Because they're just hassled all the time, right? Just because, they have a big platform for a lot of people in a lot of different projects, right? So, they're very difficult to get hold of. And Drew is, he speaks. He's one of the experts at a lot of the big, conferences and stuff. And he's a good guy, right? Just a genuinely lovely dude, right? I think that very much came across in this episode. Anyway, that's enough from me for today. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you have a great day, and may the force be with you.
The music